Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning into the Vibrant Health Podcast, hosted by myself, Jessica Espinoza, and my friend and colleague, Lydia Shatney. I am a wellness coach and educator whose main goal is to help inspire you to live your most vibrant life. You can find me writing about all things health and wellness over at deliciousobsessions.com and jessicaespinoza.com. Lydia is a nutritional therapist and founder of the Divine Health from the InsideOut.com website, where she works with clients all over the country and helps them improve and regain their health using nutritional and mineral balancing protocols. We are so excited that you're taking time out of your day to tune in. But before we get started, since this is a health-related podcast, it should be noted that we are not licensed medical professionals. The information and advice provided in this podcast is not intended to diagnose, treat, or prescribe for any illness or health issue and should not be construed as medical advice. You should always consult with your medical practitioner before making any changes to your diet, supplementation, medication, or lifestyle. Now, on to today's episode. Thank you for tuning in. Let's get this show started. Hey everyone, welcome to episode number 33 of the Vibrant Health Podcast. Thank you so much for joining us today. Today's episode is all about the ladies, but if there are any gentlemen tuning in, we want you to make sure you share this info with your favorite ladies because it's really important for their health and happiness. So before we get started, Lydia, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good. It's sunny here in Pennsylvania today. Had a little snow, but I think it's going to melt pretty quick. And,
Good.
Hanging in there.
I feel like I'm going to start giggling because we were talking before we started recording, and I feel like giddy for some reason. We were talking about some funny stuff. So we're going to dive into a show on safe feminine care, and we're going to talk about why you should consider maybe changing up the feminine products that you're using every month and kind of give you some food for thought and try to throw in a little humor because this is a topic that a lot of people don't want to talk about and can be kind of serious. So we're just going to try to keep it light and share some new information with you and hopefully give you some food for thought. So, so most women probably don't think about the feminine products that they're using every month. I know for a long time I really didn't. I just, I found a brand of pads that I really liked. I never liked tampons, probably haven't worn a tampon in 15 or 20 years. And really just stuck with that. I got in a really comfortable routine. I bought the same brand every single month and was just comfortable. But one thing I was not thinking about were the chemicals and the toxic ingredients that were potentially in those pads. So a few months ago, glyphosate made a big splash in the news when it was reported that commercial feminine care products, which are your disposable pads and your tampons, contained extremely high levels of glyphosate residue. So now women are putting one of the worst chemicals that's ever been created into our hoo-has. So not cool for us women. The study was conducted in Argentina at one of the universities, and they reported their discovery that 85% of all cotton feminine products tested positive for glyphosate residue.
Yeah.
I know, it's crazy. And that's one thing that I had never even thought about glyphosate residue being in my feminine products. Like we talk about it being in our food all the time. That's, I think, pretty common knowledge. And, at least in the alternative health world, you've been a big advocate over the last year or so about talking about it more. But I never stopped to think like, oh yeah, that could be in my pads too. So yeah, kind of scary. So that really kind of lit the fire under me to maybe make some changes and some better decisions regarding what I was using. So if you're not familiar with what glyphosate is, the World Health Organization has even ruled it as a likely carcinogen. It's the main ingredient used in Monsanto's widely popular herbicide or weed killer Roundup. So it's the same stuff that you can buy, at Home Depot and Lowe's and gardening stores and all of that. And then it's widely used on our staple crops, including cotton, which is, in addition to having Roundup used all the time, it's quite often genetically modified and then is turned into feminine care products, which contain all of this high levels of residue of the glyphosate. So we're going to link down in the show notes, we're going to link to some really good articles about glyphosate and its dangers. If you're new to this topic, I really encourage you to read those articles because the glyphosate residue is becoming a really, really prevalent problem in our food supply. And now we have to start thinking about how it's affecting the other cotton products that we're using in our home. And since our skin is our largest organ, you really want to be aware of what you're putting on it and what it absorbs. So when you're using tampons and sanitary napkins in an area with a high absorbency on a regular basis, you could potentially be doing more harm to your body by absorbing these chemicals down there. So definitely not cool. So I have been using like the Stay Free Ultra Thin brands, I know, full of chemicals, full of artificial fragrances, all sorts of things for, many years, probably 15 years. But it was what was really comfortable to me, and I never found an organic, natural product that really felt all that great. So we're going to talk a little bit about kind of your safer alternatives for feminine products. So the most common products are going to be your 100% organic cotton disposable pads and tampons, which you can find at a lot of health food stores. You can probably even find them sometimes at some of the big box stores, depending on the area that you live, and then online, of course. And then we've got reusable menstrual cups, reusable cloth pads, and then also reusable cloth panties. So I never really found any organic cotton products. I did try a couple of brands that I was finding at my health food store, but I never really found anything that fit well. So even though I knew that I should be using better feminine care products, I just couldn't make that switch because nothing was as comfortable to me as what I was used to, which was the Stay Free brand. That's just what I was comfortable with. So I know that you, Lydia, you said that you have not dove into the reusable products yet. So I'll let you talk a little bit maybe about some of the organic cotton products that maybe you've tried and have liked. Maybe give our listeners some suggestions on what they can listen to.
Sure. Well, there's a couple options. It's funny, I switched a long, long time ago, mostly because a lot of these feminine care products would have like perfumes and just things, and I was so sensitive to all the scents and different things they're adding to them, and I just felt that part alone was toxic. Then years ago, I found organic cotton tampons, and I was like, oh yeah, totally makes sense, and I've never looked back, just made sense to me at the time, and now, of course, the problem is much worse with glyphosate. You just look at the guys who are spraying the glyphosate, and they're covered from head to toe in gear.
Yep.
Come on. Let's just use our brains for 1 second. So, and then we're putting this in our most delicate parts, ladies. So, and one of the things that I want to say really quick about using organic, and I know it's a little more expensive, but come on, this is worth it, because I work with individual women clients all the time, and one of the biggest things women are dealing with are huge issues surrounding their cycle, discomfort, cramping, pain, all this stuff, all kinds of problems. And there's a lot of things that play into that, but some of the ladies who have made the switch to more clean products and stop using tampons, and maybe they use the cups or just organic pads or whatever, they noticed that they had less cramping and problems during their cycle just from that alone. And that to me is reason enough to really think about this, let alone, this toxicity, right? So that is a huge reason to consider this if you're somebody who's struggling. And in fact, I was at the salon yesterday talking to my hairdresser about PMS and all these health problems, and the girl who did my nails, and she's like, well, what can I do? My periods are horrible. And I was like, well, what do you use, for one? That's one thing I can tell you, because I can't give her advice, really, at least not too specific. And so we talked a little bit about a couple of really basic things, and that was one of them. And I was like, listen, sometimes it matters, what products you're using. And she's like, really? I was like, yeah, it's worth checking out, and that's a doable thing for most people when they're not ready to make drastic life changes in terms of, taking on major health protocols and all this stuff. So think about it that way. And if you want to just switch from what you're using, like regular products, just to something that's more organic and chlorine-free and fragrance-free, which is what I was originally looking for back in the day, there are a couple brands out there. We've got Seventh Generation's an option. Natura Care is another one. And I've actually been using Azalea, which actually is something you can get at Whole Foods if you have one, or just on Amazon if you don't have a Whole Foods. You can actually find these on Amazon. They're a little on the spendy side, but if you are like me, I kind of know exactly how many pads I need, and exactly how many, all the different kinds I like, and I have my little routine every month.
Right.
And because I have a cup, I don't use tampons at all. So I use my cup for the first couple days. Jessica's going to talk about that in a minute. And then I have pads because, they're portable, they're easy. I'm not ready for the cloth pads just yet. I'm not really interested in that just yet and washing them. Not there just yet, but, and not a lot of, and not everyone is. So, making the switch just to something more organic could really be a good first step for many people to kind of tackle. So there are 3 brands that we know of that are good. I really like the Azalea. Their mini pads are really small and thin and comfy for the most part, if you can really call a pad comfortable at all. It's such a fun thing. But, they work, and so that's something worth trying. But they all, give them all a try. Take 1 month to try one brand, and one, just kind of try them out and see what you like the best, what works for you, and you'll, have some options there. Also, I want to say Trader Joe's used to have an organic cotton tampon. Mine doesn't carry it anymore because they didn't sell enough. I was like, well, I'd buy them all, but they discontinued them. So, but anyway, maybe somebody else has them in their Trader Joe's, who knows, but if you have a Trader Joe's near you. But it's becoming a little bit more available, so keep your eyes peeled. You never know when you're going to stumble across it at your local healthier, grocery store or market.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm going to try the Azalea brand. I'm going to order a box of those just to keep, like, in my purse if I happen to be out and about or if I'm traveling or something like that. Because I really, really love the cloth pads, and I'm going to get into why I love them a little bit later. But, sometimes you do need to have a disposable product just on hand, because if I happen to be out and all of a sudden somebody shows up, then I need to have something. So, so it'd definitely be handy. And one of the things that you had pointed out, because I really liked the ultra thin ones. Like, I hated really thick pads. And so you said that the Azalea does have an ultra thin version. So I'm excited to give that one a try and see how it compares.
I think they might have 3 different styles. They have the ones with the wings that you can kind of hang on, wear overnight or whatever. And, I'm speaking from kind of my own personal flow and that kind of stuff. Some women have really heavy, heavy cycles. So I don't know what, you'll have to figure out what works for you according to your flow there. But they do have, I think, 3 different, kind of variances in their pads. So, there's options there, which is nice because when I first started looking for this stuff, there was not very many sizes and shapes, and the tampons were in those horrible cardboard applicators that really suck to use and put in. And you're just like, this is just not worth it. That's why we love these plastic applicators, because they're just so easy. But, they are pretty bad for our environment and everything. But so, now they're getting better at making these things be more user-friendly and comfortable and everything like that. So, hey, we're in a good place in terms of having options.
Absolutely. Well, speaking of the environment, actually, if the chemicals and the fragrances and the bleaches and all that stuff wasn't enough reason for you to make a switch to a cleaner product, I'm speaking now just about the reusable products. So I have made the switch exclusively to cloth pads and to menstrual cups as well, and I absolutely love them. And the majority of the reason, the biggest part of the reason I did that was because of the glyphosate residue and just realizing I needed to make a better decision. And I had been toying around with doing cloth pads for a while, but I kind of was on the fence. But, once I started researching, there's roughly 20 billion pads, tampons, and applicators that are being tossed in the landfill every year. So the average woman is going to use around 17,000 pads or tampons in their lifetime. So that's a lot of stuff going into the landfill, and especially the more conventional products are not going to be biodegradable, and they, could linger in the landfills for hundreds of years into the future. So there's the environmental impact. There's also financial savings. So reusable products are a great way to save money in the long run. It is going to be an investment up front. Like some of the cups can be kind of expensive, anywhere between, $20 and $40 a piece for the cup, but they can last for up to 10 years is usually what I'm seeing the recommendations on the site. But I have heard of women who have had cups that have lasted longer than that. So there's a lot of potential money savings there if you decided to go with a cup. And then reusable pads tend, like everything that I have read and that I've spoke to people who actually make cloth pads, I've spoken to a few women on Etsy, pads can last for up to 5 years, if not more, as a cloth pads. So if you take really good care of them, they can sometimes last more than 5 years. So I kind of calculated out like how much I would be spending on menstrual care products for the duration of when I kind of anticipate not having my cycle anymore. And I think that I'm actually going to be saving quite a bit of money, even though it's more of an investment up front right now. But so for me, that was enough, the getting rid of the chemicals and everything, and then also just making a better choice for the products that I'm using down there, because we're really starting to talk about starting a family, in the next year or 2 or 3, and I want to just do whatever I can to keep that area healthy and happy. So financial savings, and then comfort. For me, one of the biggest things that I noticed after switching to cloth pads was how much more comfortable my periods are. The pads are breathable. They move with my body. They don't leave me chafed. I know like some of the disposable pads have a lot of plastic on them. They can sometimes rub in sensitive areas or maybe leave the inner thigh areas kind of chafed if you're using one with wings. So for me, the cloth pads were just so much more comfortable. So I really am like an advocate for cloth pads now. It's crazy because I went from like being totally against cloth pads. I got it. I kind of wanted to try it, and I understood why women use cloth pads, but I was so squeamish. I was like, there's no way that I can just rewash my menstrual products. Like that just doesn't resonate with me. And then about 6 months ago, I realized, when we have kids, I'm planning on using cloth diapers. So really, what is the big difference here? So that kind of like warmed me up to it. But
that warmed you up to it. Sorry.
I know, it's so funny how our minds work.
That's such a warming thought.
I know, isn't it great? I know, it's so silly. I just wrote a big blog post about it and did some videos and stuff, and I felt, I was like so excited doing the videos and talking about this stuff, and I'm like, wow, if you told me 10 years ago that I would be so vocal about talking about things like poop and periods and all this stuff on a very public forum,
right?
Like I would have probably looked at you like you were crazy. So It's really funny how things change.
It sure is.
So in regards to your cloth pads, and you can even get cloth panties. Now I did test out a reusable pair of underwear, and I like them for my really as a backup if I'm using a cup, but I like the cloth pads better. And frankly, I just feel like the cloth underwear is just a little bit more expensive and potentially won't last as long as the cloth pads do. So I did try one pair, and, I'll continue using them until they wear out, but I don't know if I would ever buy any more. So figuring out how many pads you need. So just a couple of tips for women who may be wanting to go down the cloth pad direction. If not, that's totally fine. I was really nervous that cloth pads would not work as well as disposables. I was, really accustomed to a certain level of protection with my disposable products, and I was just really paranoid that I was going to be out and about and using a cloth pad and I would like bleed through or something. And so I was kind of freaked out for a while. So when I first got my cloth pads, I would not leave the house wearing a cloth pad because I was so scared. But after a few cycles, you really get used to your cycle, how the pad is going to work, which pads work best for which days. So what I recommend people do is try, do some research. When you Google cloth pad brands, you will come up with so many different options. And then Etsy is an excellent place to look for cloth pads as well. There's a lot of really just small, independent, female-owned businesses that they just make cloth pads and they sell them on Etsy. And that's actually where I got the bulk of my pads from. I met some really, really lovely women. So I strongly encourage you to look on there. And what I would recommend is finding some brands that look good to you, that you're interested in, and then maybe buying one pad from each brand. And just experiment with those for a little bit. You may have to use some disposable products in the interim while you wait to do laundry or whatever, but you'll get a feel for kind of which pads you like better, which ones feel best, which ones fit your body best and your flow and all of that too. So don't sit down and invest in a big set right away. Try some different brands and see which ones you like better. And then you'll get an estimate also of how many pads you're going to use during the day so that you can calculate how many you actually need to buy if you wanted to have a full set. Another thing to keep in mind is the type of fabric that's used for them. So some of the reusable pads are going to be made from conventional cotton, which we talked about a little bit earlier. So it's still going to contain some glyphosate residue. So you can get organic cotton pads, which are going to cost more, but it's definitely a worthy investment. But that said, it's about progress, not perfection. So some of the pads that I ordered off of Etsy, and then I got some from Luna pads as well. Not everything I ordered was 100% organic. So, if we really wanted to go totally gung-ho about the 100% organic cotton, then we really would have to start buying all of our clothes from organic cotton clothes and sheets and towels and all that stuff. And really, that's not going to be financially feasible for most people. So progress, not perfection. Here, just some things to keep about. So tons of options. Check out Google, check out Etsy. We'll have lots of suggestions down in the show notes below as well. But that's kind of the tips that I can give you for cloth pads that kind of helped me whenever I was getting started. So you ready to dive into cloth pads, Lydia?
Maybe.
That's funny.
I was just thinking, I'm like, well, what if you are out and you're wearing your cloth pad and you need to change it? And then what do? You have to carry the darn thing? And I was like, yeah. So a little planning maybe. I've carried poopy diapers around, but man, it certainly isn't glamorous, I'll tell you.
That most of the cloth pads, I will say, most of the cloth pads will fold up really nicely, and you can actually use, because they'll come with wings that snap into your underwear, and then you can actually fold those wings the opposite way. You can fold up the pad or roll it up, and then the wings can snap over it. So you can kind of make it compact and stick it in your purse. But if it's a really heavy day or something and you're using a thicker cloth pad, it could take up some space. So you definitely do have to do some planning.
Right.
When I go traveling or if I'm going to be out all day away from the house, I will either wear like a cloth pad with a cup, or I will, still use a disposable pad. So I haven't had to do that. I did that, I think, the first month that I was trying the cloth pad. But then since then, I've got a feel for kind of which pad I need to use and all that stuff. So I feel more confident going out. And so far, no accidents. So we're good. But I would still I'm going to order some of those azalea pads just to keep on hand, stick a couple in my purse, and then have them for traveling and stuff too. Because, there are just times where it's just not as convenient to have a reusable product. So,
right, sure.
So yeah, and it really just kind of depends on your comfort level. I started hearing about cloth pads probably 10 or 15 years ago, but I would have never dreamed of actually using them until kind of within the last year. So
right.
The other thing that you could try are menstrual cups. So that's one thing I was really nervous about was trying the cups. I have never liked tampons. They've always been super uncomfortable. I have really bad memories of using a tampon that was too high of an absorbency for what my flow was that day, and removing it was horribly painful. So that was the end for me with tampons, and it was back when I was a teenager. So I was pretty scared that I wasn't even going to like menstrual cups. I loved the concept of menstrual cups because I have 2 days that are super, super heavy, and especially those nights are really heavy too. So I loved the idea of them, but I was just really nervous to try them. So I was really pleasantly surprised. Even after the first couple of tries, they definitely take some getting used to, and it will probably take you a couple of months to kind of get the hang of them. It takes practice to know which folds. There's a bunch of different folds that you can do for your cups for inserting, and then, what angle it needs to go in and how to get it to sit properly. So you just have to practice. And ladies, I will tell you that if you're going to start using menstrual cups, you're probably going to become very familiar with your lady bits, more than you may have been familiar with them in the past, especially if you never have children or anything. So
I'm laughing.
Just be forewarned. I know, you're like, oh, just whatever. But for those of us who don't have kids yet.
Yeah, I'm pretty familiar. But you're talking to the no baby crowd over there.
Yes, the no baby crowd. So,
sure.
So yes, they will take some getting used to, but I was really, really surprised at how comfortable they were, even when I was just brand new to them. So I want to give you a few tips on selecting the cups and kind of what to do. So again, like the cloth pads, there are tons of brands to choose from. You could just do a simple Google search. I have a couple of recommendations. I tried out 3 different cups, the Ruby cup, the Lily cup, and the Diva cup. And you'll see, I actually will link to my full review of those cups down in the show notes, so you can check that out and see what I thought about all of those. But there's still tons more in addition to those. So almost all the cups are going to be made from a medical grade silicone. I don't personally react to silicone, and I've never had any issues with silicone, but that is something to keep in mind. I have met a couple of people in my life who do react to silicone products, so that's something to keep in mind if you do happen to be one of those people that reacts to it. I can tell you that you're probably going to need to try out a couple of different cups before you find the right one, the perfect one that fits you well. All of the cups are going to be pretty similar in design, but it's really amazing how even the slightest difference in shape, length, width can make for us. So I would recommend if you try one and it doesn't fit well and you just don't like it, don't give up. Just try a different brand and see what you think. So just kind of rotate through them and see which one fits the best. Now, I was telling Lydia about this as part of why we were laughing so hard before we started recording. So one important tip is to not cut off the stem of the cup before you know how far the cup will sit. So if you watch Google videos and you read stuff online about cups, if you're researching it, almost everybody's going to tell you that you don't need the stem. You can go ahead and trim that off. So each cup is going to have the stem part that hangs down, and the stem is essentially it's like the string on a tampon. It's how you pull it out. Well, I didn't think that I was going to need the stem, so before I ever even tried the cup, I cut the stem off. And yeah, let's just say that getting it out was a little bit tricky. So some people are going to have to cut the stems off, and it really is going to depend on where your cervix sits during your period. I learned that after cutting the stem off that my cervix must sit pretty high because that cup went really far up in there. Getting it out was not all that easy. So I really wish that I hadn't cut that stem off. It would have been super helpful. So I recommend trying it, seeing how far your cervix sits up there, and you can actually feel it if you want to use the finger test. A lot of articles online and videos will tell you to actually, well, that's part of fertility planning too, is testing where your cervix is and how it moves during your cycle. So you can actually get a feel for how far yours sits up. I know women who have cervixes that sit really low and others like me that sit really high. So just a big tip there. So like I said, you're going to be getting familiar with your lady bit, but this is a good thing. The more we know about our parts, the better our health is going to be in the long run. So I think that's really like my biggest tip for the menstrual cups and the cloth pads. Practice. It's going to take a little while to get used to them and to find the products that work best for you. And if you're not ready to switch to the reusable products, then use some of the more organic, natural versions of the disposable products. That's totally fine. It's whatever your comfort level is going to be. And you may kind of progress like me. I tried some organic stuff, and then I was just like, okay, I'm ready to do this, especially after learning about the glyphosate residue and all of that. So that was a huge motivator for me to make a change in there. And I'm glad that I did. I'm really, really happy with the comfort, the protection that I've been getting with the products that I use. So,
it's a process for sure. I'm going to get real here for a second because
hey, do it.
I think it's helpful to hear this stuff. So I bought a Diva cup. It took me a year before I could convince myself to use this stupid thing. I'm not kidding. I'm not lying. It was in my drawer, and I kept looking at it. I'm like, oh, yeah, I got to try this stupid thing. I mean, I had a bad attitude. I knew it was like, going to be great. Everybody talked about it, and it literally was a huge mental hurdle. And I have had 4 babies. So I don't even know what my deal was. So one day I was talking to my good friend, and I don't even remember how this came up. And she's like, well, just use your Diva cup. And I'm like, I don't want to. And part of it is I get a little discomfort, the first day, and that's when I'm heaviest. And I was just like, I'm already feeling yucky. I don't want to try something new, And she's like, just use it. Just shove it in there and just do it. Come on. She's like, it's not hard. I know. We've had 4 babies each, so saying stuff like that is kind of how it goes, right? So I did not cut the thing off, the stem or whatever. I didn't know anything. I didn't read. I just was like, fine, I'll just use it. Took me a little finagling to figure it out. And then finally I was like, oh, I don't even know what was in there, Yeah. So I was like all worried about nothing, this big whole ridiculous mental game I played with myself. And anyway, so now it's super convenient. If I run out of tampons or something and I don't have them for my next period, there's no big panic. I always have it. It's always available. It does take, sometimes takes a little more effort to get it in right, and sometimes it's just easy peasy. So that's a little strange at first when you're first using it, for sure. But, and I think the women who've had babies are probably going to have a lower cervix more than likely. I'm not saying that across the board, but it's probably, chances are. We have that low pelvic floor after all that, right? So it's a little easier, to get in and out and not worry about that stem as much, I don't think. But I do think it's a good tip. Leave it in, I didn't even know. So it took me a while, and I was finally like, that thing's annoying me. And my friend's like, just cut it off. I'm like, oh, I can do that? I mean, seriously, I was this ignorant about the whole process, you guys. So, but anyway, I share that, my silliness and my ignorance, to maybe help you learn how to have a better experience and not be freaked out about it.
Right.
Just try it out and see how it goes. It's now I'm like, oh gosh, I'm so glad I have this thing, and it's really easy to wash. That was the other thing. I held myself back about washing it. I was like, okay, gross. Well, what am I going to do? I have to dump it, and then I have to clean it, and ew, that's so gross. Seriously, I was ridiculous about that. And it's really easy to clean. It's so easy. It's not even funny. So,
yeah, that's actually one thing that we didn't go over. I probably should talk about how you actually clean them and care for them, because I think that was one of my mental hurdles too. The cups, super easy to take care of. And remember, if you properly take care of your reusable products, your cups can last 10 or more years and your pads can last 5 or more years. So the cups are super simple. When you first get it, you're going to want to sanitize it. You can just toss it in some boiling water for 5 to 10 minutes before you use it for the first time. Once it's boiled, you can remove it from the water and let it air dry. Or if you need it right away, I just hold it by the stem and just shake all of the water droplets off. And then all of the cups are going to come with a little, like a muslin, breathable storage bag that you can just store them in if you don't need it right away. And then during your period, now this is where I think probably a lot of women get freaked out, and I was a little freaked out too. So the general recommendations is if you need to change it during the day, and most cup manufacturers are going to recommend changing it every 10 to 12 hours, but it's really going to depend on your flow and your comfort level and where you're at. So if you need to remove it during the day, to change it, so you can just, when you remove it, you can just dump the blood and everything in the toilet, and then you can clean it with hot water and some non-toxic soap, shake off the excess water, and you can reinsert if you need to go on your way. Just as simple as that, hot water and a non-toxic soap, and you're good to go. You can wash it in your sink, you can wash it in your shower, wherever you feel comfortable washing it. I'm totally not squeamish about anything, so I just wash it in the sink. I wipe off, all of the remaining residue as much as I can with toilet paper, and then wash it with hot water and soap, and then reinsert it. If you're extra paranoid and you want to clean it more between uses, you could boil it in between uses if you want. So you could remove it, clean it off with hot water and soap, and then boil it again and then reuse it. That's not always going to be, efficient for everybody. You're not going to have the ability to sit around and wait for it to boil, but you could do that if you want.
That sounds so tedious. What about hydrogen peroxide or something, or just something to kind of sanitize
I haven't come across anything that actually mentioned using peroxide or anything on the cups. Everything that I read was just hot water and a non-toxic soap. And some of the cup manufacturers will sell like a sanitizer. I used air quotes on that. You guys can't see me, but I used air quotes. That you can use. But Honestly, I have some reservations about some of those sanitizers and the ingredients that would be in them, so I would much rather just use a clean soap and hot water.
Yeah, it's not like bacteria is going to stick to silicone in, 30. I mean, I don't know. We could probably find some evidence of that, but it's really not a big deal to just wash with hot water and reuse.
Yeah, I'll have to look and see if I can find some alternative cleaning methods, but that is pretty consistent across the board if you're researching it as far as the recommendations for cleaning. So, and boiling anything in water is going to be like the ultimate sanitizer there. So when you're done...
Clean filtered water.
Yes.
Filtered water.
When you're done with your period and you don't need it anymore, you can, clean it with soap and water, and you can boil it again and then just store it in the little muslin bags that it comes with, and then you're ready to go for your next period. You could reboil it again. I have a drawer in my dresser where I keep all of my reusable products, and so between uses, I just make sure it's really clean, and I store it in the little muslin bag, and then it's ready to go for the next period. So the silicone is super durable, and so boiling it regularly in hot water is not going to degrade it or anything. And even with regular boiling, the manufacturer states that they can last for 10 or more years. So cloth pads and panties. Now I know this is probably the part that freaks some people out too. So I was a little squeamish when I first started thinking about how I was going to wash this, but then I had the whole cloth diaper realization. I was like, yeah, well, it's not going to be much different from that. So I need to get over this. It's crazy. So you can wash them by hand or wash them in your machine. Depending on who the manufacturer is for the cloth pads, they may have different washing recommendations for their pads. So whenever you buy cloth pads, you're going to get their washing recommendations for that. So go by what they say. But in general, you can wash them in any temperature water with just your regular laundry detergent, whatever non-toxic laundry detergent you're using. You can pre-soak them and stain treat them if you want, but I've never had to pre-soak my pads. And honestly, I have a nice big, huge full set now, and I only have one pad that has a stain on it with no pre-soaking or anything like that. So they get really clean in just the regular washer. I wash them on hot water with a non-toxic detergent, and I also put a scoop of the oxygen bleach that I get from Tropical Traditions in there as well. You don't want to use chlorine bleach. You don't want to use fabric softeners. You don't want to use any chemical stain removers or anything like that. It can degrade the materials and make them less absorbent. So really just a non-toxic detergent and some oxygen bleach if you want. Some people will use some vinegar in their wash as well, but actually I think all of the brands except for one that I purchased said not to use vinegar because it also will degrade the fabric. So just the oxygen bleach and the detergent is simple enough. And so I usually do mine in a separate load. I only do laundry for myself every 10 to 14 days. So I typically will just have a separate load that I do with my pads whenever I'm done with my period. So I just store them in a bag in my closet. You can use one of those wet bags or a mesh bag or, whatever you have handy. You can toss them in there and then wash them at the end of your cycle. Or if you want to wash them with other laundry, you can totally do that too. I know that freaks out some people, but some people will just toss their pads in when they're doing laundry. If you're a busy household that does laundry like every day or a couple of times a week, you might find that that's more convenient. So you're really just going to have to figure out when your laundry cycles are and what you're most comfortable with doing. I just wash mine separately in a small little load, and then I dry them in the dryer. You can let them air dry if you want, but I find that when they air dry, they don't get as soft and they just don't feel as comfortable. So if you dry them in the dryer, they are going to get softer and be more comfortable against your skin. But really, that's it. Pretty easy peasy.
Okay. Can I give you major props and kudos? Everyone, Jessica is mega thorough here. And I just want to say she spent the last few months doing all this on her own and figuring this all out and testing this all out because we had planned this in advance. So she did all this research and took all this effort to share with you guys. So, give her a thank you in the comments if you can, because this is the kind of stuff that, it's we love to put this out there, but this is the kind of thing that Jessica does. She's totally, being real thorough. So I'm just sitting over here wow, you just went the extra mile, man. With all this stuff, I'm wow. I am pretty much just fly by the seat of my pants when it comes to all this stuff. I mean, I'm somewhat planned, but anyway, so yeah, thank you so much for that. All those like details, and it takes a lot of the guesswork out of it for people, and the fear and the, you know, just like the anxiety of the whole process, and it's just pretty cool. So
yeah, I have some detailed videos. I actually did videos. I did the full like recyclable menstrual care 101 post on my site that we'll link down to you in the show notes. But I have videos. I did videos on everything too. And I think it's sometimes helpful to just like know that even if you're considering it and you have some reservations or some fears, to know that somebody else has also had those same fears.
Right.
So yeah, it was actually a lot of fun. It was something that I was looking forward to sharing with all of you guys, but also I'm really happy that I made the decision to make the change for my own personal health as well. I feel really happy with the decision, and I feel like I'm doing something really good for my body and supporting my nether regions in a very good way. So yeah, I'm happy to share.
You know, you got to figure, I was sitting here thinking like, okay, the average woman has a menstrual cycle for upwards of 35 to 40 some years of her life. That's like a big deal. Like we spent a lot of years. And so with that in mind, you know, if I had daughters, I would want to get them started on a more, you know, organic, non-toxic kind of path in this regard, simply because I knew better, you know. So for all the moms out there who, you know, have girls, and this is something that you're going to want to consider to teach them, you know, young, and get them on the right path, because this is important. And I don't think any of us really understand how it could have impacted our health over the years of using the more toxic stuff, and especially now that it's just getting worse. So this is important information, and it's something that, you know, it doesn't have to take a lot of effort. And we've done a lot of the research for you, and then you can kind of go and use that and learn even more if you like. And so it's good stuff, and we hope that you'll, you know, use it and share it with others, and spread the word about this, because it is important. It does matter.
Absolutely. Totally agree. Well, I have nothing more to add. I think this episode actually got a little bit longer than we had anticipated, but I was passionate and I had lots of information to share. So I guess we could go ahead and wrap up for the week and let everybody go on their way. So
sounds good.
Awesome. Well, thanks for tuning in, everybody. We will see you again next week. Have a great day. Thank you so much for listening to the Vibrant Health Podcast. We really appreciate you taking time out of your day to listen to the information we're sharing. If this information resonated with you and you know others who could benefit from it, we would love it if you'd share it with them. We'd also be very appreciative if you could leave us a review on iTunes or Stitcher. If you're on our sites or YouTube listening to this, we'll have links down below where you can leave a review. If you're on your phone listening through the app, you can also leave a review directly through the app. It only takes about a minute, super fast, super easy, and your shares and reviews help us reach more people with our message of health and wellness. So we really, really appreciate your support. If you're looking for more information on health and wellness in general, both Lydia and I have a ton of information on our sites. You can find me over at jessicaespinoza.com, which is my main practice website and where I offer my 21-day sugar detox coaching. And in the future, I'm going to be offering nutritional therapy coaching as well. You can also find me on deliciousobsessions.com, which is my main real food and natural living website. You can find Lydia over at divinehealthfromtheinsideout.com, where she offers nutritional therapy consultations and hair tissue mineral analysis services for those who are ready to take their health to the next level. Lastly, if you have any suggestions for topics you'd like us to cover in future episodes, we would absolutely love to hear from you. We want these podcasts to be as informational and inspirational as possible, and we'd love to hear from you and understand exactly what you would like us to cover. You can email us or leave a comment below, or even give us a shout out on social media. We both look forward to serving you and inspiring you to live the healthiest, happiest lives possible. Thanks for listening.